Hi, everybody. It looks like I have to lean a little forward here, so I apologize about that. Um, uh, I hope everybody's doing well, interacting with each other relatively reasonably, and trying to understand some of the circumstances that occur when their interactions with each other are a little pressured. There's a subject matter that I'd like to talk about tonight, if I can, and that relates to the soul. I think there are so many interactions with this concept of soul, from the business that it doesn't work, there's no such thing, to from the business that it's something so far beyond our interaction that we can't really make any sense of it. And I can only give you, honestly, my view of the thing based on what my conceptions are and what I found to be as real for me as I can relate to. And one thing that we might keep in mind from at the beginning is that there is a whole system of openings that relate to enabling us to move from one level or state of engagement with energy. As you all know, from my perspective, we're all energy beings. And these energy structures that we have, for example, the personality is an energy structure. What the personality is then is the interaction that we have with this plane. It's a form through which we engage with this plane. The energy that comes through those chakras, whatever levels are open, doesn't matter, whatever levels are open, are expressed through a form that we call personality. We have a big dilemma with this word because it is a form that we use. The soul is a system that through which energy flows into this plane. But also, the personality can be induced to lift into other planes and recognize those states as a different state based on how it sees the construct or form that we call personality here. Most interesting idea, hard to understand. In thinking about it, if you can, there's a concept that might be helpful, because we split things in two, as you probably realize. Higher state, lower state. And we constantly do this. And I can understand why we do this. And basically, it's involved with the idea of a form through which we engage with others and ourselves. So if you look at this, let's say, the idea of a newborn coming in, from the moment that they are unconsciously conscious and move into a state of consciousness, they are being taught how to construct a form that can exist here. And normally, since the individual is in the womb, and I know, gosh, people say, well, I can remember being in the womb, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. But in a kind of a way, that could be created by the activity of an individual's unconscious reflex to be valued here in this plane. It may not be, but it could be, as all of it could be. Because there's such a tremendous level of survival here that relates not only to the survival of the form that's being constructed, but the competition that goes on with others and with yourself, your family self, to be valued in a world that doesn't value very much, except basically what it decides is valuable. That is not a state of high-level engagement. It's a state of kind of an empirical state or an empire state relating to how you shake out in the eyes of others. So let's get back to this other thing. If energy is coming in through the root, the gonad, and solar plexus, which it normally does, it comes into a point that this level of engagement can handle as you relate to your personality and you're called a name, let's say Joe. So Joe becomes conscious of Joe, but not conscious of how he or she, could be Joe, how they decide that they're Joe. Well, others have decided they are Joe, and they engage that way. They learn that they have to be a certain way relative to how their family background is, misunderstanding their family background and understanding their family background at the same time. No one sits around as 3 and 5 years old and considers the possibility that the parental background will train them exactly the way their previous parental backgrounds were training them, and back 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 generations, as some believe. So what does that mean? It means you come in, Joe, if that's you. Unfortunately, I don't know too many Joes, and maybe that's fortunate. You come in and you engage in life, and constantly you are in an interaction with others. Can't get away from it. You're also in an interaction with yourself, but that is usually unconscious reflexive relationships that go on within you based on your ability or inability to make sense of the world and from time to time notice what you're actually doing. Now you bring in the concept of increases in energy coming in through this form or set of chakras, whatever you want to call them, that relate to this plane, the physical. It's a shock for people to understand that they are related to this plane. At the same time, their potential is related to an augmented concept called higher than the soul, whatever that happens to be. And some will believe, oh God, there's 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 levels of engagement beyond soul. And they even have an idea of what that is based on what they've come to believe through whatever they've learned. Not personally necessarily, but an engagement with others who deem to have learned that. Our dilemma is this. We do not understand that the energy coming through that soul structure comes through to help us to become more conscious. It's a very basic tenet. Becoming more conscious does not mean becoming more important. It doesn't mean devaluing what you see. It means being cognizant, conscious of what's there to be noted. Nothing is negative about there. It's an aspiring awareness. Awareness is only becoming more conscious of what is there. Built into that element, that soul form, is various degrees of residence. Seems weird to say. You come up with a view of the world, someplace between 0 and 15, then you shift to another view in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, 70s, whatever it may be. But you are not consciously aware as a norm on this planet, but you're consciously aware of some, but not 100%. Our system is not set up yet to do that. But you could say potentially we have that possibility. What 100% is, nobody knows. But many have been able to function and learn what other states, through their experience, have been like, and they are presenting views of what that means. This is quite interesting and might even be valuable in the sense that if you shift into a different state, you would automatically, reflexively, emotionally assess a state of engagement with those particular states that you experience. This is a dilemma because most of those states are man-made or man-assessed. Pardon the man bit, but we are you man. It's the way we are. And this causes a real dilemma. It's said in Eastern and Western traditions currently, because there's so much of the Eastern and the Western traditions, that if the soul structure has been opened in every center, every chakra, every zephyr, every fireball, every whatever you want to call them, then that means that they can link up, and that uniting element enables us to have a wondrous advantage. The advantage is this: if any one of those centers or any one of those states within our relationship with life opens up all the way through, then automatically the soul's structure has been cracked open so that potential can begin to engage with what we call real life, which isn't really real life from the view of many, because it is imagined life. Imagined life is you are at where you are, and you believe where you are at and where you are is valuable to you, because that's what you are. To go beyond that causes some consternation. Let me give you an example. Here you are at a state when this whole thing is being cracked open. A small thread-like link from the base of your spine to the top of your head, one could say, or from the base of your feet to the top of your head, has been opened. Now you come under the potential that you have. You are a form in potential. You can then engage beyond where you were before. At the same time, your personalized version of the world does not want to move because it enables you to feel more comfortable to remain in that place. It is a state. It is not a future state, past state. It's just a state recognized within that small amount of perception that you have, whatever it may be, or huge if you believe it to be so, that this is a state where you are relatively conscious, but you use the structure of deep imagination to maintain a level within your mind, within your emotions, within your body, that is valued relative to how you assess the world and yourself. You are the assessor, therefore you are the point of reference through which you see the rest of the world, including yourself. This is neither negative or positive. You are just seeing. You are learning how to see. If you add, wherever you put your focus, energy will flow. Then every time you're grumbly, energy flows there for the purpose of you to engage with that grumbly, so you'll know that doesn't suit to be there all the time. And to learn that other point, wherever you focus, energy will flow. There is no perfection in how we do this. We do this based on other pathways that we have been involved with. In other words, how you sat at your kitchen table with your parents, how they brought you up, how they acted out to validate them as tribal leader, or as people who are honestly, sincerely trying to help you to understand either one or two things. Act like me or never do this. Seems like a paradox. It's not their fault. They didn't know they were doing that. And in fact, most of the time, they attempted to get you to act out in a manner that would be helpful to your survival. Logic says, if they survive the way they did, you can too. This becomes kind of a love contract. If you act that way, you will be appreciated by those who have taught you to be that way. No contract was ever signed by you. No expression of that was ever told by them to you. Never discussed. You took it on. You took in the energy that they were giving out through these centers or chakras or Zephyroth. And you copied how that worked for them. And then you engaged. Not fully conscious of how you are doing it. It is not a negative thing. It's how one generation helps the other generations to survive. Now, mind you, it's been given all kinds of names. It's just a form called personality. It's an energy form. It's a habitual way of engaging with life. This is not negative. This is just habit. Ever tried to change a habit that you were in love with? This is remarkably difficult to do. So, the soul decides, or let's say the soul in its wisdom, if it's really only a device, then the energy in its wisdom passing through the soul device, which is really helpful to us, helps us to see more of what we do, because that's where our focus is. Let that sit for a second. Our focus is right there. Then from there on in, it tries to help us to see that which we do so we can pull back a little from what we do. By noticing it and trying to do something slightly different. This implies that it's trying to help you become more conscious. In a practical, honest, honorable manner, doesn't make a decision about how you are, how you should be, whatever that means. You have to come up with that yourself, and you already have. You've already decided how you function. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Same is true for you. Same is true for me. Same is true for everybody else that you think are gloriously engaged with some high level. Find an honest one. They'll tell you exactly how they engage. And they're vulnerable in their engagement. And they're doing their level best at whatever level they are. Because they're not only trying to help others, they're trying to help themselves in their growth as well. Whatever levels they are. There's a dilemma at the lowest levels. Let's say, let's use the heart center. Let's say the heart center opens a little bit more than it's normally opened based on the energy that can pass through the lower centers, the root, the gonad, solar plexus. Remember that small thread I talked about all the way up through? Some people would disagree that that is not there in most people. Well, it's there in many people. If we are a part of a species that has it in many people, we are affected by those people, because energy transmits from those people to help others to be in a state where they can handle more energy. Therefore, more energy flows. Interesting to try and put your head around that one. So here you are. Heart center opens a little bit more. The energy that's increased coming through the heart center, or throat, or brow, or crown, anyone, increases the amount of energy that is in your solar plexus, gonad center, and root center. The reason why is to broaden out the root, gonad, and solar plexus so more can be lifted into the higher states. So what I just said was, as the upper centers open, they impact on the lower ones to broaden out the energy that's coming in to those lower ones so that you can move beyond where you were before. In other lifetimes, maybe you reach a point where that's all you can handle, then you live life and die. Yeah, you don't die, the form dies. You pick up another one. Nothing negative there. It's what we've been doing for a long, long time. As a species, individually. Make this one count. It's important. Because if you can broaden out and become conscious of, thanks to the soul, of how you function, you can make a space in how you function where you can say, I don't agree with how this works for me. I think I'm going to back off a little bit and be a little kinder to myself by doing so. Wow, that brings up another thought. There's a reflex within us that is very valuable to us, generally speaking. And that is the reflex to survive the early stages of our development. And we copy, and we copy deeply. And we engage as if how we function is the only right way to function. And when we find ourselves in a little bit of trouble, we try and numb ourselves so that we don't go past the level of plus or minus what we can handle, and we numb ourselves and keep ourselves in a position so we don't grow more. So, when you're numbing, whatever methods you're using, giving yourself a hard time, giving yourself a good time, ignoring, making judgments about all kinds of different things, wherever you focus, energy goes. So it increases your capacity to do exactly what holds you in the same position, even if you're in a so-called, from your perspective, a higher position. Same thing occurs. This is wondrous, so helpful. If you look at it from the point of view, oh my goodness, I'm actually being prepared to see what might be holding me in a position, and I already figure I'm at a great high level. Right, Joe? Grow through this series of broadenings to such an extent that you are given access to a different level of understanding. Higher level of engagement with the heart center opens the lower centers. After you're in it, after the point of reference where you actually feel the heart center coming on and you're glowing, then you begin to notice that energy is not only coming down into this state of root, gonad, and solar plexus, which is your firm foundation. That's how you survive in life. You must survive in life. As the Christians would say, or Christ said, if you do not have a firm foundation, you cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven. Not because you're bad, but because if more energy comes into you, you won't be able to handle it. It's the kindest, loving thing, a compassionate thing that ever could be there for us. So, we don't like that one, so we make up other stories. Well, I'm more important than somebody else, this kind of thing. And if Joe sees that better, she or he can pull back from it, or attempt to, but it will come up again. It'll come up again because there's continual broadening so that you can handle more energy. And as you are more able to handle more energy, more flow comes in for the purpose of helping you and helping others to broaden their capacity to engage with higher states. It's so interesting that we need desperately to know that we're valuable. It means we're highly insecure, not only as a species, but individually. And that's no small thing to throw in at anybody's face. Because when you throw it, you are showing your inability to handle an expression of consciousness that doesn't put you at the highest state. So one of these things that is really, really valuable, it's valuable in nations, politics, it's valuable in relationships. You don't want to be lesser than anybody else. So the reflex is to be superior to other people. It's something that really means we're extremely vulnerable because we have an inferiority complex. You can see this in nations where they think they're so superior, or other nations that think, oh my God, I can never measure up, this kind of thing. These things they come together, but they're not a duality. They engage as one. If you have one, the other's there. Good thing to know when you're looking at an internal expression or watching how you function, and you will notice both and learn how to deal with it using a portable chakra, for example. Second thing, use your dialogue. Talk to yourself and say, whoa, just a minute. What's this about? Why is this increasing? And you might get an answer that says, it's increasing because you have broadened your relationship with the solar plexus. It's a powerful form that is there to help you survive in a way that you believe you need to be for survival's sake. In other words, you want to say the way you were 15 seconds ago, almost identical. Or you want to get to a place where a state conveniently considered higher is there. So take a look at Joe's increased engagement with higher states if the heart center comes on. Because it increases an engagement with the brow center, with the throat center, automatically, and can engage increasingly with the crown center. If these other centers come on at the same time the heart center is coming on, that means what? The root, gonad, and solar plexus centers broaden out. And they have to come together as a form through which you construct personality slightly different than it was before. Don't listen to other people in this one. You got to listen to yourself. But you already do that. You protect yourself. So shift it from protection to perception. Perceive it, not protect it. And that will be really helpful. So, Joe's asking for the impossible because he would be asking it, or she would be asking it for themselves, if they had any idea that that might be helpful. A third level of engagement is attempting to be kind internally. Create that form that softens down the natural reflex to survive when it's not as necessary as you believe it is. And sometimes it is necessary. Try one when it's not as necessary as you believe it is. See if you can figure out what that might mean. And then learn how to be okay with what you see. Because it's just fact-finding. Notice it, recognize it, acting in those manners, those ways that you have, are similar to what's gone on before in the past. You might get lucky even and be shown a few previous lives, which are indicators, not that you're special, they're indicators to show you where you could work out some of that stuff in this timeline, this life, if you believe in that sort of thing. You are a wondrous composite being, capable of something way beyond what you think. And there is a loving, wondrous kindness to a higher state that moves into you to help you to perceive what's there to be perceived. Why would it trust you so much to learn how to deal with that instead of using that increased flow through the heart center? In this case we're talking about, and of course it influences the upper centers, and therefore influences the lower ones to make a broader, firm foundation than you had previously, and a much more conscious one. Conscious doesn't mean judgmental, doesn't mean critical, but it can mean a kind of critique where you look to see what's there so that you can understand you better. Thus create a form in the mind, in the emotion, in the physical, really, because all of that is kind of physical, so that you can actually notice differences when the higher mind comes in, when a shift in the emotion occurs, so that something you were about to say or do doesn't occur because you notice that there's an option that might be helpful. Same is true in the activities of an individual and their use of the physical form, whether it be the physical form of the personality or the physical form of the emotion or the physical form of outthinking another person and being proud of it, or outacting, battling, proud of your great, wondrous capacity. All of that is just part of our relationship with living life. And the broadening of that is, my gosh, subjective. Yeah, I know. But suspiciously close to change. Is change okay? Only to be noted by you. If change does occur, try to be okay with how you're seeing it and what that's about, because the recognition of change may not sit well with you. It normally doesn't, and here's the reason why. You're already in love with the form that you already have and how you use it, how you engage with it. This is kind of normal. So when you're looking at your next wondrous empress or emperor from your perspective, you or somebody else, know that they are in a process of growth. And they are. So are you. What you come up with is the thing you come up with to conserve your relationship with how you've been, because you're unable to see within you for the purpose of helping you to broaden out more than you can. More than you can. Doesn't mean you can't broaden out more. As you broaden out more and be more respectful of you and others, you'll be shocked to find out that you're looking at things within you you never saw before. And I don't mean negative. How you are so subtle, how you're so obvious, how you're so careful, how you're so engaging, how you're so respectful, and how you're completely disrespectful, as long as it suits the form that you've already constructed. and realize that you have within you the need to be valued, but at the same time to survive in a manner that could be helpful to you, both in relationship to remaining the same and moving into a different level of willingness to allow yourself to perceive beyond what you can now. To perceive beyond what you can now, there's a certain amount of stability that has to be rendered in how your physical reflexes and defenses, your emotional dispositional, with all due respect, perception of others and yourself, and your mental reflexive response to protect those two express themselves. At the same time, recognizing that if you happen to be watching that occur, you are cultivating a fourth aspect that lies within your personality, and you can use your personality for that reason, but it also lies within your mind and your engagement with a higher state. Also, you notice that at some point, this higher state is not legitimizing you as you engage with others. It's attempting to perceive what's there to perceive. And that is through the auspices of that so-called, those soul potentials, or those energies that come through these centers or chakras, whatever you want to call them. And it's broadened you out so that you notice a shift in how you perceive. At the same time, from time to time, you notice that you are somewhat similar to how you were before, under certain duress. Duress related to how you were constructed as an individual personality, and what that meant to you, and what you had to do from your perspective to survive the way you believe you needed to survive. None of that from a higher state is negative. It's constructing a form, broadening out, reconstruction, noticing, being curious, wondering, why does that happen? And why has it shifted so much so that I can see it? Sometimes I can even implement. Sometimes I cannot. Sometimes I hide in behind it. Because that way, if I don't pay attention to it, then everything I do is okay. Or if you go the other way, everything I do is not okay. These are just part and parcel of the same ball of wax. Not negative, just a method of survival. So is there a conscious awareness within the energy that passes through the soul mechanism? That's an interesting question. It seems as if there must be, if it knows, and we're a part of that, although we're an unconscious part of that, if it knows where more energy can express itself, and when we are able to handle it better than we believe we can. Very disturbing. It implies that that level of or state knows better than we do. To counter that, what we do is we study. We study stuff. Rules are one of our best shots. We make rules up all the time. All kinds of organizations make up rules. If you're like this and this and this and this, then it's very valuable. Rules are very important. Okay, yeah. It keeps you and gives you the sense of being valued if you know the rules. If you're brought up in a family to break rules, then you break those rules. It makes you feel better. Why? Because that's the originality of how to function. We all have these two things in us. It's just the trick is finding them. And when you find them, the trick is, oh my goodness, just saying, oh wow, I didn't even know I had that. Or I knew I had it, but I didn't think I had it there. So, what's so darn important about knowing that? Well, according to Joe, she or he perceives this and leaves a space and emphasizes a need not necessarily to always protect those things. You have to see them so you won't protect them. If you don't see them, you're going to protect them. When you see them and they work for you, you'll want to protect them. Next stage, seeing them and not necessarily agreeing with them. That means you don't have to protect them. Because if you try to protect them, the emphasis becomes solidly engaged with how you do that. React emotionally, mentally, physically, judgment, self-validity, all this stuff which is all part and parcel to our survival. Somebody said this sounds like wisdom. If it is wisdom, then we're sadly lacking. If it is, and it can, cultivate a person into a position of feeling more superior to others, it can, if that's if being vulnerable and having less capacity to others has been in vogue for you and your family upbringing, it could mean that you will become superior because previously you were less, you were disadvantaged, so to speak. Both of those things are part of the same thing. So learning how to be introspective without being judgmental becomes an extremely important piece. So you can make a windshield in there so that it's okay to look, because more energy can come in. For example, if in Joe or Josephine's situation, you have more energy coming in, heart center, back of the neck, as soon as it comes on, throat area, brow, somewhat in the crown, perhaps. That energy coming in doesn't care about protecting unless you make it go in that direction. Because it's trying to help you, as I said, to learn from its help. So energy follows thought. Act, react, aggression, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. It's okay. All of that's all right. Except you can't blame anybody else for it. And that's sobering. Because Joe would like to blame a lot of other people for that one. Not Josephine, but I mean Joe. So when you're right in there at that point, what do? What's your most natural reflexive response when you see something you don't like? You guess at that. From Joe's perspective, it's to blame it on the system. The systems, if it doesn't come in the way Joe's decided the system should come in, if it's really spiritual, then it should come in like this versus that versus this versus that. It does. It comes in with tremendous love and kindness. I did say that before. But it's considered from the view of a form that's in the process of change. In the old traditions, that change happened over eons of time, really slowly. I always say there must be something coming up so desperately important. The change has become much more, well, let's say speeded up. Excuse me. Because there's all across the planet, there's a tremendous increase in psychological interest. Also, at the same time, a tremendous increase in ignoring all of that and being typically involved with just the concept, if I'm more powerful than you, then I'm better than you are, and I can prove it by attacking your world, blah, 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 whatever it is. We do the same thing in our personal life. That's got to slow down somehow and not be used when it's not necessary to be used, and be okay with having it happen when it is necessary. If you're under attack, you're under attack. Learning a little bit about that is very valuable. Under attack is not a good thing. So somehow there's a balance in this. We're not used to balance. We're used to being right or wrong. Now, when you're talking about being spiritual to a bunch of people who are talking about being spiritual, you'll tend to engage with the talk. I'm not talking about the talk. I'm talking about the doing. And that part's the hardest. The talk's easy. Talk is everywhere. Doing is much more difficult. If Joe goes and he or she meditates, and it's a wondrous state, comfortable state, really calm, then they walk into the world. They walk into the world with an increase of energy moving through them, through those chakras. In other words, another state, higher state energy is moving into this state. Through what? Your physical form, your emotional form, your mental form. What's that called? Personality. That's what it's called. Freud called that the ego set. Many other people don't like that. Ego has become, straight away, the thing you don't like in another person. Of course, exemplifying the ego. You, I mean, not them. They have one. They do it their way. You have one. You do it your way. That's uncomfortable for people to hear. But it's more honest than saying you don't have one. You still go to the bathroom. You have to find your way. You have to deal with eating. You have to deal with how to engage with others. That's an ego state. A state through which you engage with others. That's the form. And that form ultimately will change based on that flow coming through all of those chakras. And you learning how to deal with the thing you call you. And its changes. It's good things and it's not so terrific things. But don't forget, in your life with others, you're engaging with others and you're looking for, at least to some degree, a certain amount of entertainment from other people. Yeah, I said entertainment. You engage with someone who really basically can say nothing at all, and you are entertained by that individual. They become your friend. I have had a few of those. They make me laugh because they're so ridiculous. Who am I laughing at? I'm laughing at me. Why do I find that so curious? Some people like to engage with people who are a little odd. From whose perspective? Your own. But they're part of the people that you like to be around from time to time. You don't annihilate an engagement with people just because they act a little different than somebody else. You're kind of entertained by that. And also at the same time, fortunately for you, you're not exactly like that. You have other oddities that are engaged as a personality. That should be a little humorous. If we had a sense of humor, a little bit humorous, it reminds us that we have some strange ways of acting in life because we're not perfect. And that's allowed. One of the most difficult things to deal with is the shift and change that occurs in another as they grow. Asking for help from a higher state, whether you believe in a higher state or not. Why then are you trying to engage with a higher state of consciousness? Something that would take who you are right now into such a realm that you would feel wondrously superior to everybody else? Well, partly that's true, you could say, if that's what you think. But in fact, if anything, if you're becoming more conscious, you will notice that you are an apprentice. At high states, you are an apprentice to a higher state. At a lower state, you are an apprentice to a higher state. Can you hear any difference between those states? If you do, maybe taking another look inside might be helpful. We all have to do it. It might be helpful, and if you do, you will be helping others to do the same thing. By action, not only by words. I'm not sure what time it is right now. Does anybody know? 52. I want to thank you for listening. I know this is a very difficult question with respect to the soul. The soul is a magnificent thing. If it is the form that enables us to have higher states of energy move through it into this state, it is always attempting to be helpful to us, if indeed that is a mechanism with a level of consciousness. And it's attempting to help us in a manner that will be helpful so that we can move, into another engagement with another state. And as we pass through these bodies that we have, we will not lose our relationship with that conscious awareness. We will be consciously aware of our engagement with various states. And will continue to use those forms, different in looks, but not different in energetic output and expression, because the total target is on helping others help themselves as well as helping others. We have to do some work inside for us so that we feel as if we're taking part in something instead of sitting around not doing something that might be helpful to us. Nobody is ever going to admit that they don't do anything to help themselves. Perception will help us understand that better without the excessive aspect that comes into play in our personalities that is enveloping this level that states we are judged from another plane. We are not. We are perceived, not judged. Helped, not judged. Engaged with, guided perhaps, from my perspective at least, not judged. Thank you very much for listening. I wish you all well. Happy growing.